Hi, good afternoon, and welcome to our Financial Services Live demo session today. I hope you've been enjoying everything to do with Atos Tech Days. Today is our demo session on blockchain MIFID II with reporting, and this is going to be presented by Ivo. If you have any questions, we're going to take those towards the end of the session. However, if you would like to submit any questions, there is the questions and answers area where you can submit those and we'll take those offline towards the end of the session. Okay, I think at this point I will hand over to Ivo.
Yep, that's perfect. Thank you very much, Neil. So hi everyone, welcome in this demonstration for the TURN network, so the TISA Universal Reporting Network. So first of all, let me thank Adrian and David and Nikhil that just in a previous session gave you more information on the TURN initiative, the why and how we are doing this, and all the business benefits that we expect to come from this. What I'd like to do now additionally is just take you through a bit more of the technical details of this platform. So how have we built this platform, or rather I should say, how are we building this platform, because still a work in progress. And how are we going to use this for our betterment for our clients? So there's a first use case we've created centered around MIFID II compliancy. And then in the end, after we've gone through that, I'll walk you through that example use case. I'd like to take you through some of the additional features that we plan to add to this solution later on. So first of all, the TURN network as it is now, the TISA network, if you will. It's built basically on as a, well, of course, I should almost say as a cloud native application. So it's all built on cloud, in our case on GCP, but it will work, of course, on any cloud host provider that you'd like to work with. So Azure, AWS, GCP is all fine, of course. And the platform itself is then connected to a network built underneath on Hyperledger Fabric. Now, the choice for Hyperledger Fabric was rather important, but it really brings us back to, like Adrian and David and Nikhil said earlier, why we are doing this. What's the purpose of this platform? And really what we're trying to do is create general visibility. So we want to create transparency in the ecosystem. We want to make sure that data is shared equally amongst the peers and really also as fast as possible. Now, if these are the requirements, then Hyperledger Fabric is a fine choice, right? It's a DLT solution, a blockchain solution that was built really for sharing information as fast as possible on a very light consensus protocol. No need for instance, a consensus protocol concerning cryptocurrencies on any of that. It's a real light solution available for sharing data efficiently. And that's really key here, right? So as David and his friends already shared just in the previous presentation, I mean the current solution, the current infrastructure really suffers a lot from data inconsistencies because if a fund is published, it's really published on a website, for instance, right? Or it's shared via email, and then any questions that are shared around those, or maybe updates that are pushed into the value chain, it's all done more or less bilaterally or unilaterally. There's not a single platform available or a single standard agreed upon in which all this communication can be made transparent. So there's a lot of data inconsistencies, and players in this network are never really sure if they're working with the right version of, for instance, a fund template. So all this inconsistency, of course, gives a lot of inefficiency. So there's a lot of communication, a lot of questions, and they can be put either via phone or emails, etc., etc. So that really brings us to a point that there's high or higher than necessary operational cost involved in managing these funds. Now, maybe even more important than that, of course, that if you are insecure about your data and who is working with your data, you run the risk of non-compliancy for MIFID II regulations. And that, of course, is the real main driver. Now, we believe that by using a platform based on this Hyperledger foundation, if you will, we can really support this the ecosystem into moving into this more open and transparent environment. And that's, of course, very important because we already see now that there are approximately 2,000, if I remember correctly, asset managers involved in TISA. And of course, we're expanding beyond TISA if possible. 40,000 distributors even. So it's really important to create a solution where everybody can work with the minimum amount of hassle, maybe even. So how does this work then? So basically what we have here is a network where a number of nodes are active in the Hyperledger system. And basically anybody that wants to see the data can see the data once they've been granted access by a governing node or a notary node. That's the term we like to use for this. So there will be somebody controlling or regulating what is happening on the network by granting access to an organization, and typically that organization then brings those access rights further in its own organization. Some people would need to be able to create, for instance, a fund. Other people may need the rights to download fund information or place comments, etc., etc. But once that has all been created, basically any participant that is allowed to do so can access the data either directly by hosting a node, but also indirectly. So for instance, if there's a player in the ecosystem that is willing to act as a service provider for access, he can arrange this indirect partitionership for the Turn network. Having said that, there are great advantages to being a direct participant and actually hosting a node. So the advantages here is basically that if you have direct access to the network, you can upload your information, you can write on the network, which means that you can upload your funds, of course, but you can also place the comments towards the existing funds. And the second great advantage is that if you host your own node, of course, you're really close to the data, and you can directly connect to the data on the Turn network via API, and use that data directly in your own business processing for your day-to-day operations. So those are real key features, of course, for becoming part of the network itself. And of course, the bigger the network is, the stronger the network is, and that's an additional benefit, of course. But that's a decision that the players can make themselves through the flexibility of this platform. Now, having said all this, let's have a look at exactly how this platform would work. Let's have a look at the first use case we created, which is, like I said, all around MIFID II compliance. So what I'm going to do is quickly introduce the use case, and then we'll walk you through it step by step using a couple of screens. So for this demonstration, a manufacturer, an asset manager, would publish an EMT file with new funds that they want to make available for distributors, and then the publication, the creation of this fund is kept offline. It's not part of the network yet. It's part of a separate process, like the manufacturers are currently doing with their partners, their data vendors, their data agents. They have this existing relationship, usually contractual relationships, where they cooperate in creating these funds, bringing all the data points required together under the responsibility of the manufacturer, and publishing them available, making them publicly available. So we decided to keep that as is. So once the fund is prepared in the original processing, it is uploaded to the network, to the platform, and there the system will validate what has been created. The data fields are validated just to check if they are compliant to the standards that we have agreed upon. Now, either, of course, two things can happen. Either the system refuses the file and it is sent back, basically, and the manufacturer will need to make some amends and then can try again, basically. But of course, if it's successful, the manufacturer will be shown a report, and the file will be published on the network and made available for everybody else to see. Now, of course, this can then lead to parties looking for the fund, so they can try to find the fund that they want to maybe distribute or check some data fields upon. So we've made a search function available on either the ISIN code, the name or the name of the fund or the name of the manufacturer. And once these funds have been filed, they can be reviewed, of course, and in case of doubt, any participant can place a red flag And red flags are basically comments or questions or uncertainties. Now, that's the basic the functionality of this use case for the demonstration. I'll just quickly run you through it just to give you an idea of what this could actually look like. And first of all, put your mind at ease, right? This is not the way it's going to look, right? The handiwork you see here is created using very up-to-date 1980s UX skills. So it's just a way to illustrate the functionality we're going to build, and the final platform, the final system will look much better, of course. But this is for this moment the way we'd like to show you the functionality. Anyway, what we see here is the viewpoint of a manufacturer. And the manufacturer has created a new fund. In this case, the name is FC2020.emt. Again, .emt because we're working with EMT files, the electronic MIFID II template. But typically these will be CSV files, of course. But for illustrationary purposes, we've decided to call it here an EMT. So what happens is he uploads the file, the system validates the file, and in this case, the validation report is positive. So the option is given to the manufacturer, Mr. John Smith here, to upload the funds onto the network. Simple process, and once it is done, it'll pop up as a available new fund, in this case for a distributor, Ms. Jones, and we see here an orange rather than a blue screen just to make the distinction clear. So Ms. Jones here can then look at this fund, try to find it, and see what the fund information is all about. So the fund information here it's built by Fund Company 2020. Doesn't really matter. Some information is placed here, but more importantly, there have already been placed 2 red flags for this specific fund. So a while ago, there was a remark by data agent number 1 that seemed that the costs for the fund were a bit high, which was amended. There's a resolve statement there. But basically, the costs were still deemed high by a different data agent. And that's interesting here, right? So it's a unilateral discussion. People can have their comments, they can have their opinions, and they can basically interact this way outside the closed person-to-person environment. Now, in this case, Ms. Jones is fine with the costs, but she does have an uncertainty about the risk profile. So it's a completely different type of question, but it is a question that she can, of course, raise here as well with the manufacturer. Now, if she does, she places the red flag there. It's added to the logging, and like anything else that happens in the network, this logging is basically also available for audit. So we see exactly who created the fund, if new versions have been created, and if a new version has been created, when it has been created, because from that moment on, that is the only version of the fund that's available for further processing, further distribution. And so we are certain, the manufacturer is certain that only the latest version of this fund has been used for further processing. But also these questions and the answers to these questions are being logged for auditing purposes later on. Now, in this case, this question has been raised by Ms. Jones, so we go back to the viewpoint of Mr. Smith, who is here the manufacturer, and he gets a pop-up, an alert, a warning that a new flag is available that he needs to act upon. He opens this alert. He sees here the flags that are still open and waiting for his action, and going chronologically, he chooses the one about the cost that still seem a bit high here. So basically, what happens there is that the comment details are then shown if he selects this red flag, and he is able to respond to it. It's a very simple flow. He can just create a response, type a message in there. So in this case, the costs are fine, no changes needed, and he can ignore the comment, which makes it a resolved comment, or of course, if in case he finds that the comment is valid, he can also decide to upload a new version and resolve it that way. In this case, he'll ignore it, and there it is. The comment has been resolved and it's closed. Like I said, it's a really simple use case. It's a really simple flow, but due to the size of the network with all those participants, and we basically create a lot of value already by having this shared source of truth, if you will. We created a publish only once solution where we make sure that we have all the information available. And what's equally important, I suppose, is that this full traceability and auditability also makes this a very valuable addition for the regulator to check on MIFID II compliancy. Now we have the standards and the channels now agreed upon. We can build upon this for other products or other features for the network. And maybe more importantly than the others, we even have a straight-through processing way of now making the changes for the funds. It's all part of this platform and all very readily available. Now, having said all this, it is still a platform that we purposefully decided to focus on this core visibility value, so that we can bring this to market quickly and help the industry. But we are working on a lot of additional features that can even elevate this to more value for the participants. So first of all, we really want to support a full life cycle. So creation on the platform of the new funds. Now, this would mean basically that that we need to support a way for manufacturers to work with the data agents, bilaterally, or maybe multiple data agents, of course. But we can do this still supported by the system by creating side channels where we have these bilateral agreements available and people can work on this. This would also mean that we'd like to add, of course, person-to-person communication, so not focused on the network, but maybe have a quick question that doesn't need to be regular part of the audit log. We are going to support decommissioning of funds as well, so we can flag a fund as being obsolete, making it unavailable for further distribution. The distribution of fund information we'd like to add, which will basically give the manufacturer direct information from the distributor on the sales of the funds. So not on an individual level, of course, but on numbers of funds, for instance, that have been sold. Which would also allow for bilateral agreements between the manufacturers and distributors. For instance, in case of specific pricing agreements. That can be a specific use case. It's not very common, but it can definitely become part of this network. And finally, we want to support off-chain and on-chain storage of data, which would allow us to be a bit smarter on exactly what type of data we want to put on the blockchain and which we can keep off the blockchain. For instance, the metadata versus the filing for information proper. Which can be helpful, of course, to make sure that we don't bloat this network, but also to make sure that if we have this off-chain storage of data, we can still make it available to participants for using the platform. All in all, enriching the platform more and more, and which is important, of course, because we are building this now for EMT, but like Adrian already said, we plan to move into PRIPS as well, or ESG data files, and I can see ourselves going even further beyond that as we move into more territories with this platform. And hopefully we can build a solution here that's really helpful for the industry and take away a lot of the uncertainties and inefficiencies they currently have. Having said this, I think I have shared the most important bits about this solution I wanted to share. So as far as I'm concerned, if there are any questions, please feel free to ask them now.
Cool.
Are there
Thank
any questions,
you very
Neil?
much, Ivo. Yes, yeah, we've got a couple in here that we've had through. So one of those is looking at the blockchain technologies. What other technologies have we considered?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, we already started discussing this platform with the TISA and several members of TISA, like Deutsche Bank Wealth, for instance, already in 2018. It's been a long-standing process, and one of the first initiatives we undertook back then was host a hackathon for the members of TISA, supported by Atos personnel, of course. And what we did there was really try to examine what the current state is and what the desired end state should be, what the as-is situation should be. And we even built a couple of proof of concepts back then. And funnily enough, or really interestingly enough, I should say, we chose different technologies to build these proof of concepts. So there was an Ethereum version, a Hyperledger version. Actually, there were two Ethereum versions. And we, of course, so these were definitely all possible. We also considered Corda later on. But basically what we were seeking to do could basically be solved or basically offered in a with a minimal solution, if you will, using Hyperledger Fabric. So, for instance, if we compare this to Corda, and I'm not sure if there are blockchain experts out there, they'll agree, Corda is rather similar to Hyperledger. But the thing about Corda is that it puts more emphasis on securing data and making peer-to-peer transactions possible. And even though that wouldn't hurt our solution today, it's not what we need. So there really was no need to go for Corda because we don't need that added functionality. And Hyperledger for now was the optimal solution. I hope that answers the question.
Perfect, thank you, Ivo. One other one that came through is actually around compliancy and compliancy with data. So I suppose a good example of this is, would this platform actually be GDPR compliant? Is this something that we can deal?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in the offset, absolutely, right? So we're not managing personal data on this platform at all. It's all business to business data, if you will, so fund data. But like I stated, we do plan to move into other templates, and we do want to add functionality reporting also on distribution of these funds. And we do need to be careful that once we go into those avenues, that we make sure that we remain GDPR compliant, of course. Now we can solve this multiple ways. We can keep those functionalities off the network. Like for instance, like I said earlier, if we're going to talk about distribution of funds, we can just register the amount of funds, for instance, in time, how many have been sold at what moment. We don't need to add data around the persons that are actually buying these funds. Another solution could be is on encrypting specific data around these funds or around other financial products that we are going to support. So that could be another way, but we'll check on this case by case, make sure that we are absolutely compliant.
Perfect, that's great news. And one question we have had come in as well is around containers. Did we actually consider a containers-based option?
Did we? Well, we did actually, and it is definitely part of our deployment strategy as well. So we are building this for the cloud hosting capabilities of the big three, if you will. But containerization is definitely an option as well. And basically, what we plan to do is make this really agnostic in terms of the way our clients would like to see this deployed.
Perfect. I hope that's answered the question. The next question we've got is actually around products and how difficult it is to add other financial or non-financial products. Can you explain that to us?
That's a good question. In principle, it's not difficult at all. All we need to do, of course, is define a new template we want to process and make sure that we have the right processing available within a network in terms of who is allowed to do what on the network, of course. So we need to make sure that the access and the identity management is in order. But other than that, it's really a generic file handling platform, if you will. So we could rather easily include more templates of different products or maybe different versions for regions doing the same type of reporting. So we could rather easily add those, just as long as we make sure that any regions we go into, the current regulation on which the platform is based is also applicable there. And it might be the case that if we move, for instance, outside of Europe, that we may need to add an additional layer of regulation supportive of regulatory compliancy in order to make sure that we can also use the platform there. But that's the biggest restraint I see so far. Other than that, it's a real fit for purpose solution that can, in my opinion, even if we choose to go that route, support maybe even all the banks of Europe as a new financial messaging service akin to, for instance, Swift. Just focus on these files like funds or other capital market information.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's it for questions for now, unless there's any that anyone else would like to submit. But I think we're done. So thank you very much, Ivo. I know that we will have a recording of this session available for you to come back online and have a look at. So hopefully you've enjoyed it, and thank you very much to everyone who's attended, and we hope you found it of a lot of interest.
Thank you very much.